You ever find something that completely flips your life upside down? That's what happened to Paxton for the day he decided to clean out the attic. It wasn't some big dramatic moment, just a quiet Saturday. His wife, Alexandra, had gone off for her usual yoga retreat weekend, the kind where phones are off and everyone wears white linen and says things like, "Align your energy." Paxton was home alone, half bored, half productive. He figured he'd get a jump on spring cleaning. The attic was the final frontier. Dust, boxes, spiderwebs, the usual stuff. He moved an old trunk of baby clothes, pushed aside a crate full of holiday decorations, and then spotted something odd in the corner. A small wooden box, locked, the kind with brass hinges and a little rusted clasp. It was tucked behind a stack of photo albums from when their son, Kaysen, was still in diapers. He didn't even know the box existed. Now, most people might leave it alone, but not Paxton. Not with that weird feeling crawling up his neck. He brought it downstairs, grabbed a flathead screwdriver and popped it open. The box creaked. Inside were a bunch of birthday cards, old ticket stubs, a hospital bracelet, and one thin notebook with a faded pink cover. A diary. It had Alexandra's handwriting on it, big loops, soft curves, just like the notes she used to leave in his lunchbox back in the day. He almost closed the box. Almost. But curiosity, or maybe instinct, kept him there. He opened the diary to the first page, and that's when everything started to unravel. The very first sentence was like a punch to the chest. He doesn't know. I've never told him, and I never will. Paxton sat there frozen, diary in one hand, breath caught in his throat. He didn't know what it was, but something inside him whispered it wasn't small. And here's the thing. Sometimes we say we want the truth. But what if the truth is the very thing that burns your whole life down? Speech balloon, let me ask you this. If you found out the love of your life might have been lying to you for decades, would you read on? Would you open that diary? Even if it meant destroying everything you thought was real. Backhand index pointing down. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you read it or walk away? And if you're hooked, like this video and subscribe, because this story's just getting started. Paxton didn't stop at the first page. He should have. He really should have just slammed the book shut and thrown it back in the attic. But he didn't. He kept reading. What started as curiosity turned into a slow, painful descent into a version of Alexandra he had never met before. The entries started out harmless. Little things. I miss Killian. Not like I miss Paxton. It's different. Hotter. Riskier. Weddings in 6 months. I still haven't told Killian about the baby. What would be the point? Paxton blinked. Baby? Wait. He flipped back. Reread the line again. I still haven't told Killian about the baby. His heart dropped into his stomach. He kept turning pages. Sometimes I lie awake wondering what kind of dad Killian would have been. But I chose Paxton. I needed stability. Killian was too wild. Too much fire, not enough foundation. Paxton's ears rang. There were more entries, weeks and months of her secretly writing about Killian. Always in whispers. Always in metaphors. But now he understood what she was really saying. She had been sleeping with both of them. Right around the same time she got pregnant. He stood up from the table, diary still open in his hand, and walked into the living room. There, on the mantel, was a photo from Kaysen's high school graduation. Kaysen, in his cap and gown, arm slung over Paxton's shoulder, and Paxton, proud, smiling like a man who had done everything right. But now he looked harder. Kaysen's nose, his jawline, his eyes, they weren't Paxton's. They never had been. And suddenly, A memory hit him like a sucker punch to the ribs. A couple years back, their neighbor Calvin Cochran, a retired dentist who liked to gossip while watering his lawn, had made a passing joke. He'd leaned over the fence one summer afternoon and said, "Hey, no offense, Pax, but that boy's got someone else's smile." They laughed it off at the time. Alexandra had rolled her eyes. But now it felt like Calvin had seen something Paxton hadn't, like he'd been living in a lie everyone else spotted except him. Paxton sat back down, hands trembling. He went back to the diary. One entry was dated just 3 days before their wedding. Paxton would be a great father. He's everything Killian isn't: reliable, sweet, predictable. But I feel guilty sometimes. I know I'm carrying someone else's baby, and I'm about to marry a man who has no idea. He deserves better, but I can't back out now. Paxton clenched his jaw so tight his teeth hurt. He didn't know how long he sat there. Minutes? Hours? He kept reading, page after page of beautiful handwriting. The same handwriting that once signed love letters and anniversary cards, now telling him his entire life had been built on someone else's mess. A mess Alexandra never intended to clean up. She had handed it to him with a smile and a veil and vows she didn't fully mean. And he had carried it, willingly, blindly. He closed the diary, not out of peace, but because he couldn't take another word. His son wasn't his son. His wife had chosen him, not out of love, but out of convenience. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. And then one single thought crept in. What else hadn't she told him? Speech balloon, have you ever been blindsided by a truth you didn't ask for? One that makes you question everything? Backhand index pointing down, drop a comment if you've ever felt that kind of betrayal. And if you're still with me, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this story, it's just getting darker. Paxton didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed next to Alexandra, her back turned to him. Soft breathing steady, like nothing had changed. But everything had. And the worst part, he didn't even know what to do with it yet. No confrontation, no accusations, just silence, like a pot of water slowly heating on the stove, and he was the only one who knew it was about to boil over. In the morning, she handed him a cup of coffee, like always, smiled, kissed his cheek. Nothing in her eyes said guilt. Nothing in her voice said regret. And when Kaysen came downstairs, sleep still in his eyes, Alexandra wrapped him in a hug and said, "You'll always be my boys." Paxton forced a smile, but that sentence, it stuck in his ribs like a dull knife. "My boys," that IT echoed all day. He told himself maybe he was wrong. Maybe the dates in the diary were off. Maybe there was a chance Kaysen was his. But the moment she left for the gym, he found himself back in the attic, pulling down the box of old photos. He laid them out like puzzle pieces on the kitchen table. Birthday parties, school dances, soccer games. And in every photo he stared at Kaysen. The curve of his nose, the shape of his ears, the way he smiled with one corner of his mouth, not both. Things you don't notice when you're raising a child you believe is yours. But once that seed of doubt is planted, every small difference grows into something enormous. Paxton found a photo from the hospital the day Kaysen was born. Alexandra looked tired, glowing. Kaysen, swaddled and red-faced, was resting on her chest. And there was Paxton, proud and clueless, holding a balloon that said it's a boy. He could still remember how it felt to hold him for the first time. The warmth, the weight, the way Kaysen had wrapped his tiny hand around Paxton's pinky. It felt like purpose. It felt like fatherhood. Now it felt like a lie. Later that evening, Paxton met Mateo McCormick at the bar. They'd been best friends since college. Mateo was the kind of guy who didn't sugarcoat anything, which was exactly what Paxton needed. They sat in the far booth, half-empty beers on the table between them. A muted baseball game played on the TV behind the bar. Paxton stared into his glass before finally speaking. "I think Kaysen might not be mine." Mateo blinked. "What?" "I found a diary. Alexandra's. She wrote about someone named Killian. Said the timing was close. Said she never told me." Mateo leaned back, slowly, lips tight. "You sure it's real? Maybe you misread it." "I've read it 5 times, Paxton said. "Same thing every time." Mateo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Okay, let's say it's true. What now?" "I don't know," Paxton admitted. "Are you going to tell Kaysen?" Paxton shook his head. "Not yet." Mateo leaned in, voice low. "Listen, man, if you dig too deep, you'd better be ready for the answer. You don't get to unread what you read. You don't get to unknow it." Paxton stared at the condensation running down his beer bottle. "I already know it." Mateo gave a slow nod. "Then what's stopping you from blowing it all up?" Paxton looked up. "My son," he said. "Even if he's not mine, he feels like mine." Mateo didn't say anything after that. He just reached out and tapped his bottle to Paxton's. The sound was small, but the weight behind it was massive. And for the first time since finding the diary, Paxton realized something painful. It wasn't just his trust that was shattered. It was his identity, his place in the family, and he had no idea who he'd be when the dust settled. Speech balloon, if you found out your child might not be yours. Would you want to know the truth? Or would you protect the lie to keep your family whole? Backhand index pointing down, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because the truth Paxton's about to uncover is only the beginning. By Monday morning, Paxton couldn't pretend anymore. The doubt was growing teeth. It followed him into every room, nipped at the back of his mind during every conversation. Every time Kaysen called him Dad, it hit like a bruise being pressed. So he did the only thing a man like him could do when his world started cracking. He looked for proof. He went online and ordered a discreet home DNA test. Overnight shipping. No logo on the box. No clue what was inside unless you already knew. He used a burner email and shipped it to his office so Alexandra wouldn't see. He told himself it was just to ease the panic, just to rule it out. But deep down, he already knew the truth. He wasn't trying to find it. He was preparing to confirm it. The test arrived in a slim brown envelope. No fanfare. No warning label that said caution. This might ruin your entire life. That night, he waited until everyone was asleep. Kaysen's door was cracked open. He always left it that way, even as a teenager. Just like he did when he was little and scared of the dark. Paxton stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at his son, sleeping sideways on the bed. One arm draped off the edge like he used to when he was 5. He stepped in quietly, heart pounding. He found Kaysen's hairbrush on the dresser, grabbed a few strands stuck in the bristles, and carefully sealed them in the test vial. His hands were shaking the entire time. He packed everything up, sealed the return box, and drove to a 24-hour drop box halfway across town. The next morning, he emailed the lab, Gerardo Glass Diagnostics, to confirm receipt. They responded in less than an hour. Sample accepted. Results in 3 to 5 business days. Those were the longest days of his life. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. He spent every quiet moment rereading Alexandra's diary, not because he wanted more information, because he wanted to feel something, rage maybe, or understanding, or enough disgust to make leaving easier. Instead, all he felt was hollow. One entry hit harder than the rest. He hadn't noticed it before, maybe because he hadn't wanted to. Killian told me he'd step up, but I chose Paxton. He was safer. Kinder. I couldn't let Killian ruin everything. Safer. Not better. Not more loved. Just safer. Like he was a life jacket she used to stay afloat while drowning in her own mistakes. Paxton closed the diary, walked to the bathroom, and threw up. Not out of anger, but heartbreak. He rinsed his mouth and looked at himself in the mirror. The bags under his eyes, the lines on his forehead, the tired version of the man who used to believe he had a perfect life. He splashed cold water on his face and whispered to himself, "You need to be sure." Not because it would fix anything, but because not knowing had become the cruelest part of all. The waiting felt like punishment, because no matter what the results said, the damage was already done. And some answers don't bring peace. They just end the guessing. It was Wednesday afternoon when the email arrived. No subject line, no warning, just a message from Gerardo Glass Diagnostics that said, "Your results are ready. Click here to view." Paxton stared at the screen for almost 5 full minutes before touching the mouse. His hand hovered, then clicked. A login screen, then a digital folder, then a PDF file titled Paternity Analysis, Paxton /Casinotum. He opened it, and there it was. Plain text, no emotion, 0% probability of paternity, no maybe, no ambiguity, just numbers that sliced through years of memories like a silent blade. Paxton didn't cry, didn't scream. He just stared, eyes glassy, lips parted, chest rising and falling like he'd been punched and couldn't catch his breath. The air in the room felt thinner, like grief had its own gravity. And then, like life had the nerve to just keep going, Kaysen walked into the kitchen, smiling. "Hey, Dad," he said, opening the fridge. "Leilani wants you to talk to her parents about prom night. You cool with that?" Paxton blinked. He looked at Kaysen, really looked at him, and saw 18 years of sleepovers, birthday parties, math homework, scraped knees, and bedtime stories. All of it, every bit of love he had ever poured into this boy, felt just as real as it always had. But now it was tainted, not by Kaysen, never by Kaysen, but by the woman who had built their entire foundation on a lie. He nodded slowly, trying to keep his face from cracking. "Yeah, sure. I'll talk to them." Kaysen smiled. "Cool. I told her you'd be chill." Then he grabbed a Gatorade and jogged back upstairs, yelling something about Oakland texting him. And Paxton, his whole world shattered in a 2-page report, just stood there, frozen, until he couldn't take it anymore. He walked out the back door, sat on the porch steps, and let it happen. His shoulders shook, his chest heaved, and the kind of cry that doesn't make sound poured out of him. Tears that burned, heartbreak that had no words, just raw, gutted silence. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Paxton stood at the edge of the master bedroom, watching Alexandra sleep peacefully. She looked so calm, so untouched, like her lies hadn't poisoned every corner of his life. He turned away, packed a suitcase with just enough clothes for a few days. A hoodie, his laptop, a spare toothbrush. He didn't slam the door. He didn't leave a note. He didn't owe her any of that. He walked outside, climbed into his car, and started the engine. Then he pulled into the driveway of a dimly lit grocery store parking lot a few miles away. He reclined the seat, pulled the hoodie over his head, and in the dark silence of his car, he texted Mateo one sentence. "It's true. He's not mine." No response came right away, but it didn't matter, because there was nothing left to say, just the cold truth sitting in the passenger seat beside him, and the unbearable weight of being right. 2 days passed before Alexandra came home. Paxton didn't text her, didn't call. He just waited. He spent those days in silence, sleeping in his car, washing up in gas station bathrooms, eating fast food he couldn't taste. He wasn't ready to explode. He was ready to end something. When Alexandra finally walked through the front door, sun-kissed skin, hair tied back, gym bag slung over her shoulder, Paxton was already sitting at the dining room table, waiting. A single object sat in front of him, the diary. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't just silence, but wait. She paused when she saw him, tilted her head. "You're home early." He didn't answer, just looked at her. She smiled, unsure now. "Everything okay?" Still no response. He simply tapped the diary with 2 fingers. "Sit." Alexandra frowned. "What's going on?" "Sit." She moved slowly, lowering herself into the chair across from him. Then she saw the cover. Her face shifted, the slightest crack in her expression. She reached for the diary, trying to play casual. "You went through my things." "I read your things." She chuckled nervously. "Paxton, come on. That was years ago. That was just me writing through some stuff." He didn't blink. "Flip to page 26. She did, still trying to hold the smirk. Her eyes moved over the lines. 1 breath. 2. Then the color drained from her face. He leaned forward, voice quiet and sharp as glass. "Who is Killian?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, so he said it again, firmer. "Who is Killian, Alexandra?" Her lips parted, but the words caught in her throat. It was before us," she whispered. Paxton reached into his jacket and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "Before us," he repeated. "This says otherwise." She didn't even need to open it. She knew. Still, she unfolded the DNA results with trembling hands and read the words. 0% probability of paternity. Tears welled instantly. "Paxton, please." 18 years, he said, voice cracking. 18 years I showed up. For everything. School plays. Broken arms. Driving lessons. First heartbreak. You let me build a life around a lie. It wasn't like that. Oh no. His jaw clenched. Then what was it? An experiment? A safety net? What kind of woman lets a man raise another man's child and calls it love? She reached out across the table. He flinched away. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking now. "Please don't tell Kaysen. He'll never forgive me." He stared at her like she was a stranger. "You think I care about your forgiveness?" "I didn't mean for this to happen. I was scared. Killian didn't want the baby. You did. You were good to me." He let out a bitter laugh. "Right. I was your backup plan. Your cleanup crew." Tears were running freely down her face now. "I didn't think I'd get pregnant. And then, I just hoped he was yours. And when Kaysen was born, I thought maybe it didn't matter." He stood slowly. It took effort. His whole body felt heavy. "Don't tell him," he said. "You mean like you didn't tell me?" She shook her head desperately. "He's about to graduate. Don't ruin that for him. Please." He turned to leave the room, then stopped. "He deserves the truth, just like I did." And with that, Paxton walked upstairs. Not in anger, in resolve. Because there comes a point when silence is no longer love. It's just complicity. And Paxton Ford was done protecting anyone from the consequences of their own betrayal. The next morning, Paxton woke up early. He sat in the kitchen alone, nursing a cup of black coffee that had long gone cold. He watched the sun rise through the window, orange light casting long shadows across the counter where Alexandra used to make waffles every Sunday. But there was no comfort in the routine now. There was only one thing left to do. Tell Kaysen. He heard his son's footsteps on the stairs. Lazy, unbothered, Kaysen walked into the kitchen, still half in pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning," he said, opening the fridge. "Did you talk to Leilani's parents?" Paxton didn't answer. Kaysen turned around, Gatorade in hand. "Dad." Paxton swallowed hard. "Sit down, son." Kaysen raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" Paxton hesitated, his throat thick with dread. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it all before you say anything." Kaysen sat slowly. "Okay." Paxton started talking, softly at first, then stronger. He told him about the diary, about the timeline, about Killian, about the DNA test, about the numbers on that piece of paper that changed everything. And for the first time in years, Paxton watched Kaysen's face fall into something he couldn't fix. There was no shoulder to offer, no fatherly reassurance, no hug that would make this easier, just truth and pain. When Paxton finished, the silence between them was deafening. Kaysen stood up. His hands shook. "You're saying you're not my dad." "I'm saying I didn't father you biologically," Paxton said carefully. "But I've been your father in every way that mattered." Kaysen backed away like the word stung. "Does Mom know you're telling me this?" "She begged me not to. Said it would destroy you. You think this isn't destroying me right now." Kaysen's voice cracked. "God, who even am I?" Paxton took a step forward. "You're still the same kid I carried out of that hospital. The same boy I taught to ride a bike. I don't care whose blood you have." Kaysen shook his head, and then without another word he grabbed his phone and keys and walked out the front door. No yelling, just silence. Later, Paxton found out he was staying at Oakland McDonald's house. Her parents were kind enough to text and say he was safe, just processing, which is more than Paxton could say for himself. That night, he sat down with Zaire Newman, a local attorney and old friend. Zaire didn't need much backstory. The look on Paxton's face said it all. "I want to file for legal separation," Paxton said quietly. Zaire nodded. "Do you want to go for full divorce now?" "Not yet, but she's not getting the house or control of anything tied to Kaysen's education fund." Zaire scribbled notes, his brow furrowed. "You sure you're ready for the blowback?" Paxton didn't flinch. "I've already taken the hardest hit. The rest? It's just noise." And that noise came fast. The next morning, Macy Blake, who worked with Alexandra at the wellness studio, was overheard gossiping in the juice bar. Apparently her husband found some kind of old diary. Paternity test. Full-on Maury moment. By noon, Lucille Black, who knew everyone's business and somehow still got invited to every charity event, had shared the story with half the neighborhood group chat. By dinner, even the cashier at the grocery store gave Paxton that pity smile. But the one thing that truly stopped him in his tracks came in the form of an anonymous text message. A blocked number. No context. Just this. "You should know. she wasn't just with Killian. It was signed AP. Paxton stared at the screen. AP. He closed his eyes. Alma Pineda, Alexandra's old college roommate. The same woman who hadn't spoken to either of them in years. Paxton sat back in his chair, heart pounding, because just when he thought the betrayal had a name and a boundary, he realized he didn't know the half of it, and maybe he never really knew her at all. Paxton didn't scream, didn't yell, didn't break the wedding photos or toss Alexandra's clothes onto the lawn for the neighbors to gawk at. No, he moved quieter than that. But every step he took hit harder than any explosion ever could. First, he updated the will, removed Alexandra from every clause that once protected her. No more power of attorney, no medical rights, no stake in the family assets. What once was ours became his and Kaysen's. Then he called Zaire again and drafted a trust for Kaysen's future. College, travel, startup money if he wanted it. No loopholes, no strings tied to Alexandra. Next, Paxton sat down at his computer, logged into the blog he started years ago, the one most of their family followed for photos and life updates. The kind of blog where people posted vacation pics and stories of backyard barbecues. Only this time he posted something different. No rage, no slander, just the truth. The entry was titled, "The Diary That Burned My House Down." He laid it all out. The discovery, the test, the betrayal, the aftermath. He didn't name Kaysen's biological father. He didn't need to. People filled in the blanks. And in that quiet honesty, without theatrics or blame games, Paxton lit a fuse that Alexandra never saw coming. By the end of the week, Macy Blake had stopped speaking to her at the yoga studio. Lucille Black made sure her name was accidentally left off the gala invite list. Clients started canceling sessions. Friends stopped replying to her brunch texts. And when she tried to host her annual Wellness Under the Stars Women's Circle, only 2 people showed up. One was her cousin. The other left after 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Kaysen came home. Not right away, not with smiles and hugs, but slowly. One backpack, one apology, one long night of talking by the fireplace. He didn't say much at first, just sat next to Paxton on the porch and whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore." And Paxton, eyes tired, voice steady, replied, "You're still my son. That hasn't changed." And somehow that was enough. They started rebuilding, cooking simple meals, watching old movies, leaving the front door unlocked again. And one night, when the air was cold enough to bite, Paxton carried the diary out to the backyard fire pit. He didn't tear it apart. He turned the pages slowly, read some lines one last time, then fed them, one by one, to the flames. Ashes danced upward into the dark. He didn't cry, didn't smile, just sat beside Mateo, who cracked open 2 cold beers and handed one over. They didn't say much, until Mateo looked at the flames and muttered, "Some fires clean, others reveal." Paxton clinked his bottle against Mateo's. "Sometimes," he said, "they do both." Paxton didn't scream. He didn't hit. He didn't break dishes. He just watched a world built on lies collapse in silence. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's not about hurting someone else. Sometimes it's reclaiming yourself. Quietly, powerfully. He didn't get his years back. He didn't get the truth when he needed it. But he walked away whole, with his head high, and a son who finally knew what integrity looked like. Not in biology, but in presence. Some men break, others rise. Belle, if this story hit you hard, drop a fire in the comments. Subscribe for more faceless stories just like this, and remember, some secrets don't stay buried, especially the ones written in ink.